The National Desk, America's News, now.
Protests grow across the country, coast to coast. Students speak out for peace in the Middle East. Just ahead, what some lawmakers are calling governors to do to restore order to college campuses.
I'd love to talk to you people. I'd love to say everything that's on my mind, but I'm restricted because I have a gag order.
It is day 2 of Donald Trump's criminal trial. Did he violate his gag order? And what we can learn from the first witness. Then the CDC has updated its guidance for bird flu symptoms in humans. What you need to be on the lookout for. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. And as we come on the air, student protests against the war in Gaza continue to spread from coast to coast, escalating tensions on campuses across the United States. As pro-Palestinian, pro-ceasefire demonstrations enter their 7th night on the campus of Columbia University, a growing list of other colleges have begun holding demonstrations in solidarity with Columbia students who say they're facing an unfair crackdown. Tonight, we are tracking protests everywhere from the University of California, Berkeley, to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, where you can see similar encampments are in place, all the way to MIT in the Boston area, of course, then coming on the heels of large protests and arrests at Yale University and NYU. Demonstrators now calling for their respective universities to stop investing in companies that support the Israeli military and its campaign in Gaza. But the growing protests being met with opposition from elected officials who say they're concerned for student safety. Tonight, though no cases of physical harm at Columbia have been documented, some Republican lawmakers demanding Biden call in the National Guard, while others call on Columbia's president, Manoush Shafiq, to do more to rein in the protests in the face of reports that some demonstrators have used threatening pro-Hamas rhetoric.
I've felt like this is not a welcoming environment. I think it's a very difficult time for a lot of Jewish students.
Though protesters at the encampment, many of which are Jewish, see it differently.
I'm Jewish. A lot of the focus has been on, supporting Jewish students who have been facing anti-Semitism, but there has not been a lot of focus on, Palestinian students who have been, feeling anti-Islamic sentiments.
As tensions rise, Columbia has shifted to hybrid learning for the remainder of the school year. Another dramatic day in a Manhattan courtroom as prosecutors in the Trump hush money trial began to lay the groundwork for their case against the former president. National correspondent Christine Frizzell with a look now at what we learned from the first witness.
We have a gag order, which to me is totally unconstitutional. I'm not allowed to talk, but people are allowed to talk about me.
A dramatic morning in the courtroom as Donald Trump's attorney was repeatedly scolded by the judge over his client's refusal to abide by a gag order, prohibiting him from attacking witnesses and jurors. With posts like this, they are catching undercover liberal activists lying to the judge in order to get on the Trump jury. One of several violations leading the judge to tell Trump's lawyer Todd Blanche, "You're losing all credibility with the court." The key testimony on day 2 came from David Pecker, former publisher of the National Enquirer. An August 2015 meeting at Trump Tower between Donald Trump, Michael Cohen, and David Pecker, central to questions from the prosecution. Pecker said he was asked about what he and his magazines could do to, quote, help the campaign. Pecker describing himself as the architect of catch and kill, which he asked be kept very confidential, as they bought and suppressed negative information from women selling stories, instead running multiple negative headlines about Trump's opponents, some displayed in the courtroom as examples.
What he's testifying to is kind of an ugly side of politics and trying to influence voters through work in the media or work in the refs. He did not have any testimony, about the internal bookkeeping, which is the heart of the criminal case.
Former U.S. Attorney John Fishwick calls Pecker a perfect first witness for prosecutors, a longtime loyal friend of Donald Trump who can set the table for the jury and start to build the story they plan to tell.
The case is a sham.
As Trump and his team are expected to tell theirs, a political candidate playing politics as usual.
The Trump legal team, will stick with their line, which I think will be a good line for him. This is nothing illegal. This is politics as usual. He's doing nothing that is different from any other political campaign.
And looking ahead, for the duration of this trial, court will not be in session on Wednesdays. David Pecker is expected to return to the stand for more questions on Thursday. Amira?
And Christine, you mentioned Trump's attorney getting scolded about him violating the gag order. Did anything come of that?
Surprisingly, no. This hearing was held this morning before the trial resumed, with the judge making clear there were 11 specific violations of the gag order. Prosecutors want to fine Trump $1,000 per violation and remind him he can also be punished with 30 days in jail. Judge Juan Marchand did not issue a ruling on this yet, but we expect we may get one later in the week.
All right, keeping us updated as always, Christine Frizzell live in Washington, D.C. Thank you. Washington State Police are searching for this man, Elias Huizar, a former police officer. He's a suspect in 2 separate shootings yesterday that left 2 women dead, including his ex-wife and someone thought to be his girlfriend. The ex-wife was shot at the end of the school day at an elementary school in Benton County where she worked. The other woman was found dead in Huizar's home nearby. Police have also issued an Amber Alert for his 1-year-old son, Roman Huizar. Huizar was supposed to be in court yesterday facing charges of child rape. He did not appear for that. Police say he is considered to be armed and dangerous. The victim of a weekend kidnapping in Oregon has been found safe and the suspect is in custody. The Sunday abduction was caught on camera when the woman who was abducted rang the doorbell at a home and waited for the answer. Police say the kidnapper and abductee knew each other. Their identities have not been made public. Officials in Baltimore plan to have a 4th shipping channel open by the end of the week, weather permitting. It's a deeper pathway that will allow several bigger ships that have been stuck waiting for weeks to pass through. Maryland Governor Wes Moore explained crews are working on removing the debris from the top of the dolly of the main channel so it can be moved entirely. It's dangerous work to do while other ships are moving nearby in the water.
We are going to work efficiently, and we're going to work safe, and we're not going to choose between the two.
So far, more than 2,900 tons of wreckage have been moved, and 145 commercial vessels have used the temporary channels. Disturbing new video from 2020 shows a Maryland police officer punching a suspect who had spit on him in his patrol car. We want to warn you, this video is hard to watch. You can see Prince George's County police officer Stephen Tucker hitting the man 8 times. The police department called his use of force justifiable, but advocacy group Campaign Zero disagrees. Tucker says he had to stop the suspect from spitting on him again. Our team is investigating Tucker's record. While in Tennessee, a bill that would enact harsher penalties for assaulting an officer is now headed to the state Senate. The Back the Blue Act passed the House last night and would make an assault on an officer a felony with a mandatory 60-day sentence minimum. Last year, Tennessee had more than 1,600 simple assaults on law enforcement. If signed into law, it would take effect on July 1st. The legal team for Brian Kohberger, accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students in 2022, can resume conducting surveys of potential jurors. The surveys were paused in March, but the judge just ruled they can continue. A prosecuting attorney had argued some of the questions violated a gag order. The defense said the surveys were important for their efforts to try to change the venue for the trial. Minnesota State Senator Nicole Mitchell is charged with burglary for breaking into her stepmother's home in Detroit Lakes. Police say they found Mitchell there on Sunday. She's accused of climbing through a basement window to collect her late father's things. Mitchell said her dad died recently and her stepmother wouldn't speak to her family. While President Biden was on the campaign trail in Florida talking about reproductive rights, his education secretary, Miguel Cardona, was making the case for student loan forgiveness in another southern state, Arkansas. Despite the state's governor there criticizing the policy as one of the administration's, quote, worst mistakes, In an exclusive interview with our Sinclair station in Arkansas, Cardona stood by the plan and said it would be a big boost to the local economy.
When I came in as secretary, we, across the country, were experiencing over 1 million people going into default on their student loans. So we knew it was a broken system. We had to fix it. And what we ended up doing, and a big part of this debt forgiveness, debt relief plan, is making good on a bipartisan bill that was passed in 2007. And across the country, hundreds of thousands of people are benefiting. Here in Arkansas, 27,000 people have benefited from some form of debt relief to the tune of over $1 billion. That's going back into the local economy here and helping people get back on their feet.
Coming up, lawmakers are voting soon on a multi-billion-dollar foreign aid bill. What's in it and whether the president intends to sign it. Then non-compete agreements are at the center of a long-standing debate. The action the government just took regarding the controversial clauses. And later, new insight into how book bans are impacting communities. We'll be right back. Later tonight, senators will be voting on final passage of the $95 billion foreign aid bill that gives more than $60 billion to Ukraine, $26 billion to Israel, and in the case of Palestinians, humanitarian aid, and $8 billion to Taiwan. Senators voted 80-19 this afternoon to limit debate and remove all amendments to the House bill that was passed on Saturday. President Biden says he will sign the bill as soon as it reaches his desk. Pennsylvania voters head to the polls today for their primaries across the state. With the Israel-Hamas war as a backdrop, in Pittsburgh, incumbent Democrat and squad member Summer Lee faces a challenge from local council member Bhavati Patel. Patel has been calling out Lee's critical House votes against Israel. This district does have the Tree of Life synagogue in it, where 11 Jews were killed in 2018 in a hate crime shooting. On the presidential side, Pennsylvania does not have an uncommitted line, but there is a write-in movement on the Democratic side to show displeasure with how President Biden has been handling the war. Meanwhile, Nikki Haley is on the ballot on the Republican side, and votes for her could be seen as a protest against presumptive nominee Donald Trump. Polls close tonight in Pennsylvania at 8 p.m. In a split 3-2 vote at the FTC, a final rule to ban non-compete agreements in new work contracts. The commission received more than 26,000 comments in their review period before declaring non-competes an unfair method of competition. The Biden administration says non-competes stifle competition and lower wages. The Chamber of Commerce, however, opposes the new rule, and they've already said they will file a lawsuit that will keep this new rule from taking effect before it heads to court. And the Supreme Court is considering a Starbucks challenge to the National Labor Relations Board's order for the coffee chain to rehire 7 baristas who got fired back in 2022. The workers were organizing a union at their Memphis coffee shop. The NLRB claimed that's why they were fired. But Starbucks says they broke policy by letting a news crew in after hours. A decision is expected by the end of June. Google has fired around 20 employees for protesting its $1.2 billion cloud computing contract with the Israeli government. That's according to an activist organization representing them. The company had already fired around 30 employees over the protest, so that brings the total to about 50. Employees had accused Israel of using Google's services to hurt Palestinians. Google has denied the allegations. Tesla, meantime, is going to lay off nearly 2,700 workers at its Texas facility. About 12% of the staff will be affected. The announcement came as Tesla gave its first quarter review. Profit margins fell for a second year in a row, down 12 points from 2 years ago. Last week, Tesla said they would cut their worldwide workforce by 10%. Houses before spouses. It's a growing movement encouraging millennials and Gen Zers to partner with friends and become homeowners instead of waiting for marriage. The National Desk's Janae Bowens takes a look at this growing trend.
Christina Moderis and Stephanie Douglas didn't wait to find the loves of their lives to buy their first homes.
Houses Before Spouses is our way of saying you don't have to do this in a traditional way.
Their mantra is gaining popularity on social media, where they share how to partner with others to buy homes and build wealth.
Together, we own 24 houses, but only one of those, or maybe 2 of them, we own on our own. We've partnered on every single other one with our sisters, our friends, our parents.
I could be creative, and I gained a lot of confidence.
Now they are onto something. A recent survey from JW Surety Bonds found nearly 15% of Americans have co-purchased a home with a person other than their romantic partner, and another 48% would consider it. These are numbers Moderis and Douglas expect to keep growing.
You should not do this unless you have an operating agreement.
We say that your first house doesn't have to be your dream house, and it can be a stepping stone.
And this cost sharing is especially needed at a time when mortgage rates are above 7% and the median home sale price is $393,500.
I think this is a way for younger people to get into the market sooner.
The pair have a real estate brokerage called Open House Austin. They've already helped over 600 people buy homes. I'm Janae Bowens reporting.
Well, the DOJ announced they have reached a $138 million settlement today with more than 100 people for the abuse by former USA Gymnastics doctor Larry Nassar. The Justice Department acknowledged it failed to take action even though FBI agents knew about the allegations for more than a year. With today's settlement, there's now been $1 billion set aside to compensate the victims. That includes decorated Olympians Simone Biles, Allie Raceman, and Michaela Maroney. Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich will remain behind bars in Russia until at least late June. A Moscow court has rejected another appeal to end his pretrial detention. The 32-year-old reporter has been detained in Russia for more than a year on espionage charges. Authorities have yet to reveal evidence to support those claims. Gershkovich and the Wall Street Journal deny the allegations. The U.S. declares him wrongfully detained.
Russia should stop using individuals like Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan, who has also been detained for 5 years, as bargaining chips. Evan and Paul should be released immediately.
Officials are warning about a possible measles outbreak at a solar eclipse event at the Children's Museum of Indianapolis on April 8th. More than 3,500 people attended the event, and someone with the virus went there from out of state. Typical symptoms, they include fever, cough, a runny nose, red, watery eyes, white spots in the mouth, and a rash. Symptoms could still appear through next Monday. And the CDC has just updated its guidance on the potential signs and symptoms of bird flu in humans as animal cases continue to rise. Medical reporter Liz Bonas shares how to protect against it.
Hey there, hello to you. Human cases of bird flu, also called the H5N1 virus, have now been identified in the United States. The virus does have infectious disease specialists on high alert, and here's why. For years, this virus appeared to infect only birds, not songbirds such as cardinals or robins, but rather ducks, geese, chickens, and turkeys. All of these can be infected with H5N1. But infectious disease specialist Dr. Stephen Blatt told me once the first human case was found from close contact with an infected bird,
we are very concerned, and we were even concerned before COVID, that the next pandemic was going to be due to one of these bird flu viruses.
the USDA has just shared 239 recent genetic sequences from the H5N1 bird flu virus from poultry, dairy herds, and wild birds to try and help scientists find out just how to protect both animals and humans. While the risk reported right now to humans is considered low,
as this virus mutates, it very well could start to spread within human populations.
So far, only humans with close contact to infected birds have been infected with this virus. So the CDC now asking those who have this potential to be on the lookout for flu-like symptoms: fever, body aches, a cough, or sore throat. Prescription antiviral medications do appear to help people recover when given right away, and there is a vaccine now for H5N1 in storage.
They haven't made a lot of it, just made a few doses so that they could test it, and it does look like it produces appropriate immunity in patients who are potentially at risk.
And just so you know, Dr. Blatt says even though dairy animals and poultry are at risk for this virus, with the exception of eggs from potentially infected wild or backyard chickens, our food supply is still safe to eat.
So eggs and milk, if it were the dairy industry, are pasteurized or treated so that viruses are killed, and so you don't have to worry about that.
Now, the CDC has very specific information and recommendations for those exposed to the bird flu virus. Most of the symptoms do show up within about 10 days. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
Liz, thank you. And coming up, why 2 Rhode Island children are now stranded in Mexico and how their mom is trying to bring them back home. We'll explain on the other side. We have reporters all across the country covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
Stephen Hook has been homeless for about 2 years, spending a lot of his time at the emergency shelter of Northern Kentucky. But soon he'll run out of the number of nights he can stay there, meaning he may be back out on the street. And starting in July, that would become illegal under a new Kentucky law.
Going in reverse. You know, it's going to set everyone back months. You know, you going to court, clogging courts up with, you know, they deal with serious crime, you know. But, you know, if you pass out at a bus stop, you don't need a ticket or something like that.
The U.S. Supreme Court Monday heard arguments on an ordinance in Grants Pass, Oregon, barring public camping or sleeping outside, which many say criminalized homelessness. The ordinance is very similar to a section in the new Safer Kentucky Act.
In many cases, for some folks, it's really about safety.
That's what Tom Fay from the Seattle Public Library says about the effects on moves to ban certain books and actions taken to limit access to reading material. The Seattle Public Library and Brooklyn Public Library just released a new report showing the impact of book bans on young people.
For an example, here's a parent who says, I've been trying to read genderqueer and it was denied, and that my student or my child was denied a scholastic book fair on multiple occasions by different people.
Bye. I hope you guys will see you soon. Sarah Martin's son and daughter checking in from a hotel room in Cozumel, Mexico, after their spring break vacation took a turn for the worse.
They were having the time of their lives, just having so much fun.
The fun stopped when Martin says their grandmother suffered a heart attack. According to Martin, she was too critical to return to their original port of Miami, and the family was rushed to a local hospital in Cozumel, where their grandmother remains in a medically induced coma. To make matters worse, the kids do not have passports. Now Martin is begging the U.S. Embassy for a lifeline to allow them to fly home.
For the first time in 5 months, the most distant spacecraft in the cosmos is sending NASA clear data again. Back in November, Voyager 1 began sending engineers on Earth a repeating pattern of code. The mission team spent months trying to figure out what was wrong with the 46-year-old probe that's 15 billion miles away. But then the breakthrough came in March, and today it is back up and running. Fun fact, Voyager 1 crossed into interstellar space in 2012, making it the first human-made object to venture out of the solar system. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.